All right, good morning. We'll get going here. This won't be a long lecture. There is no Chapter 23 quiz this week. It's just reaction quiz because we've got the midterm next week. I forgot I didn't create a quiz for that chapter. So good news for you guys. Just make sure you get your reaction quiz. Hopefully I'll get this video up before too long. The interwebs here at the school are down right now, so I'm recording this video, just saving it to my computer until an opportune time when the interwebs come back up. So there's no slides up on the board in here, but the slides should be already posted. But we're on the anti-communist crusade slide part, which is the last like 3 slides. We'll go through that. Next Wednesday is your test. The study guide is posted, so make sure you're tracking that. Okay, and just so you know, I think the midterm is all going to be online. So I will post it in 2 parts, probably when I post it Wednesday. So everyone will be able to take it at the same time, roughly. Okay, loyalty and disloyalty. Big thing, if you're looking at the notes I printed out for today, those of you in the classroom. McCarthyism. This is a product of the late 40s, early 50s. My senior research paper in college, I actually did a lot of research on McCarthyism and wrote a paper on it. So, McCarthyism is essentially assaults on individuals without any evidence claiming them to be communists or enemies of the state. So it's basically falseless claims. It's I'm saying, Brock, you're a terrorist, you're a terrible person, etc., without any actual evidence. But by me saying you're a terrorist or a communist in this era, default you are now labeled one. You don't even have to produce anything. It's just the saying, right? So this is a very dark time in U.S. history as far as accusations. It's named after Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin, who was a really unknown name senator who rose to prominence during this period, and why we nicknamed this period of this falseless claims as McCarthyism.
Would you say some of that's going on now?
I would, on both sides. I don't think it's one-sided.
I don't think it's one-sided.
I think there's a lot of falseless claims that are going around. The internet is a terrible place, actually, today of that. Truman introduced a very controversial thing called the loyalty program. It failed to cover any cases of espionage during the period, but basically you had to take an oath of pledging your allegiance to the U.S. government. Because we knew the atomic secrets that were leaked to Russia had come through spies. In 1947, HUAC, which was the House Committee on Un-American Activities or something like that, is a weird long name, launched a series of hearings about communist influence in Hollywood. There'll be 10 actors in Hollywood who will be blacklisted for their supposed support of communist groups. Now,
do you know who they are?
I could go through, but basically they were just fired and never given any work. That being said, there's a very, very strong anti-communist feel in this period. Not more than you're going to see in the spy trials. Whittaker Chambers, editor at the time, testified before HUAC that during the 30s, Alger Hiss had given him secret government documents to pass on to agents of the Soviet Union. So going back, during these intense, high-stake public hearings and investigating whether they're spies, this guy named Chambers said that a man named Alger Hiss had given state secrets away to the Soviets. I think what was in that case, I think they call them the pumpkin files because they were supposedly hidden in a pumpkin, a hollowed-out pumpkin. Either case, it caught the imagination and the attention of United States citizens. But the most famous case is going to be Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. They were supposedly passed atomic secrets to the Soviets. Chief accuser was David Greenhouse, Ethel's brother, saying that my sister and her husband had basically sold atomic secrets to the Soviets. Little evidence at the time to convict them. Hysteria at the time led to their conviction. Judge declared that they had helped cause the Korean War, and they will be executed in 1953 with very little evidence. Mostly hearsay and other items. However, the reality is, guess what we found out 40 years later? They're guilty. They actually did probably move government secrets. That being said, should they have been executed? That is still up to debate because the fact this was, I think, one of the Wasn't the first time the U.S. has ever executed, because the first female ever executed by the U.S. government was the conspirator during the Lincoln assassination. But this is a huge moment, right? The Rosenbergs are tried and executed for treason. At the time, it was always wondered if they were actually guilty, but modern evidence suggests that they were, in fact, very guilty. Okay, moving on to McCarthy and McCarthyism. So Joseph McCarthy, as we alluded to, loaned the election on a fictional war record. His nickname was Tailgun Joe, something like that, something catchy, right? He ran on a World War II veteran status. Most people, men at that time, a lot of them were veterans, right? So no one questioned it. It was all fake. He served in the war, but he was not a tail gunner. He was actually just a boring nobody.
So did he make that up?
He did. It was complete fabrication, and no one validated it.
Did the press or anyone help him out with that? No?
This time, you don't have a lot of evidence to counteract people's claims like that.
Right.
He's going to go to Wheeling, West Virginia in 1950, so he's elected, I think, 48. He's going to go to Wheeling, West Virginia. He's going to come up, and if you've ever heard this guy talk, and I think the internet's back up, but I'll actually try to get his voice up. It's a very nasally, annoying voice. And the reality is with him, you don't want to listen to him. One of the most annoying people. But he comes up to the podium, so I got the podium right here, right? He has his briefcase, and he goes, "In my hand, I've got names of 209 individuals, or 211, whatever the number was, who are loyal communist members in the State Department." Did this list have anything on it? It had names that had been already vetted by the State Department. But what's he do when he does this? What's he create?
False accusation.
False accusation, gets hysteria built up, people go berserk. He gets appointed to a subcommittee in the Senate because now he's a name, he's made an appearance, and now they're going to start investigating anti-communist activities, right?
Why are people so gullible to this?
Because people were fearful of communism. Remember, the Cold War, has just started, right? The fear of the West versus the East. And so people at this time wholeheartedly believed there was a communist infiltration. Now, a lot of it's fabricated, but there was some truth to that there was spying by the Soviets. There is no denying that. The problem is he used it to his political advantage. He was eyeing the White House. Now,
in this now famous 2.25-page document, there were about 35 names listed. This is pretty serious. Have we had anything that's serious in this so far? Well, yeah, I think we've got something much more serious.
let's see here. This is all jacked up. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I just want you to listen to his voice. Well, the internet was back.
1 month ago tonight, we presented a report on Senator Joseph R. McCarthy. We labeled it as controversial. Most of that report consisted of words and reply on film. Here now is Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, Jr., Senator from Wisconsin.
Good evening. Mr. Edward R. Murrow, Educational Director of the Columbia Broadcasting System, devoted his program to an attack on the work of the United States Senate Investigating Committee and on me personally as its chairman. Now, over the past 4 years, he has made repeated attacks upon me and those fighting communists. And of course, neither Joe McCarthy nor Edward R. Murrow is of any great importance as individuals. were only important in our relation to the great struggle to preserve our American liberties. The Senate Investigating Committee.
That's him. That's Joseph McCarthy. Does he seem remarkable? No. He's kind of bland, isn't he?
Why is he like? Why do you talk about himself in third person there?
It is a unique way to go about it, right? And so what he's doing is, just a little context here. You said, why didn't people challenge him, right? Well, that guy you saw at the beginning of the video was named Edward R. Murrow. Was a journalist who really, and here his name is Edward R. Murrow, was an investigative journalist. So you guys know what that, like, investigating. So like right now there's all these investigative journalists, right? Biggest one, does anyone know what the biggest famous person that's been investigated now that's kind of fallen from grace? You have the R. Kelly stuff going on, but there's a documentary series that just came out here recently on HBO.
Einstein?
Nope.
Oh. I know they found his other puzzle.
Yeah. No, it's about Michael Jackson.
Oh, with him supposedly raping the
Boys. Yeah. All that stuff, right? Coming to light now. Edward R. Murrow is that type. He's an investigator. He's a journalist. He was a war correspondent, well-established journalist, right? Well, he challenges McCarthy after a series of things he does. He basically goes on television on his show called See It. I think it was called See It Now. There's a movie that was made a few years ago, about 10 years ago, called Good Night and Good Luck. And his tagline, as he would leave, he says, "Good night and good luck," and that was how the show would close. Anyway, he goes after McCarthy, and a lot of the network said, "You're on your own." Basically, if you go after him, he comes after you, you're on your own. And that was the rebuttal. So what you saw was McCarthy rebuttaling, right? Now, that rebuttal starts to raise a lot of questions. You know, like, obviously, Murrow brought up a lot of valid points, but really what brought McCarthy down was he went after a personal friend of President Eisenhower, who was a dentist during the war. And he goes after him, and basically the president steps in, "No, you have gone too far." And when the president steps in, and basically they're hunting for communists in the army, a lot of, like the army's like, "Wait a second, you're going way out of right field here." Edward R. Murrow, McCarthy will be censored and lose his prestige very, very quickly. So he has about 4 years where he has a lot of influence, but in 54, he will basically be shut down. So this atmosphere of fear, states created their own UN committees looking for spies. Those who failed to testify about their past and political affiliations may have lost their jobs. This is going back to the 30s. We talked about in multiple of my classes, we talked about the Great Depression. The Communist Party was active in the United States. They'd give free food and all these things if you came in and listened to what they had to say, right? So if, Brock, you're hungry, are you going to go to a soup meal just to hear something out? If you have no food, you're poor, and someone's offering you free food just to listen to something, are you going to do it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you would. So a lot of people, when they're signing these communist roles, are not they communists? No, someone once said we were all communists in the 30s just looking for food, right? So a lot of this is inaccurate, very nasty. It's just this climate of fear. The uses of anti-communism, there was undoubtedly Soviet spies, but Communist Party had hardly posed a threat at the time. Many faces and purpose, it was all fear-driven. Sometimes it was more vendetta-driven. The FBI will expand during this period under J. Edgar Hoover. He will wield a lot of power during this period. Anti-communist politics, the McCarran-Walter Act of 52, vetoed by Truman, overridden by Congress, required subversive groups to register if the government allowed the denial of passports to their members and authorized the deportation or detention on presidential order. So you have very restrictive means here to regulate a lot of groups and what's going on in the country.
Wasn't Hoover, didn't the FBI like start stepping over lines like back when Hoover first started it?
Yeah. It was started in the 20s. So Hoover was the original director of the FBI,
right,
and he will go all the way up to the 70s. So he's in technical charge of the FBI for like 50-some years.
And they were like not doing their jobs right.
Right. They had files on everybody, which wasn't necessarily legal.
Yeah.
Operation Wetback go into Mexican American neighborhoods and round up and deport non-citizens. Unionized workers to establish health insurance plan, automatic cost of living wage increase, paid vacation and pension plans. And then non-unionized members, majority got increasingly inequality. And so basically, if you were unionized, you got better paying jobs. And basically what was behind the union is if you joined the union, that meant you were loyal and you would do whatever the union wanted you, and that was a good. If you were not part of the union, then you were kind of outcast and you would got lesser pay, lesser benefits. So all this is working to create a very anti-communist feel in the country, right? We could go for hours on McCarthyism and McCarthy, but the reality of this is he's short-lived, he has prominence, and he's really unremarkable. Fast forward a little bit, McCarthy obviously fades from grace. He's censored. He leaves Washington and dies in 1960 from liver poisoning. Alcohol poisoning of his liver. So his liver shut down. I think it was his liver or kidney, but I think it was his liver. But he basically died from alcoholism.
He drank himself.
Yep, drank himself to death. So, that wraps up this section. There is no Chapter 23 quiz this week, just the Chapter 23 reaction quiz. Next week, we'll have back to our normal schedule for the most part, but Wednesday of next week, midterms will be posted online. Have a great day.